I'm not entirely sure which sub this belongs on, but it's a weird story. My nan passed away 2 years before I was born. I was an unplanned pregnancy, so she didn't know that I would be born, and my mom and dad hadn't even met at this point and were living about 70 miles apart. A few years ago, we were sorting through some things, and my mom came across some paintings that her and my nan, her mom, tried to sell at a car boot sale years prior, way before I was born. They were signed with my first initial and full last name. My last name is double-barreled, including both my mother and father's surnames, and both names come from different countries. My mom and dad have never met until a month before I was conceived, so clearly I was not planned. And the paintings were in glass frames, so they hadn't been touched since my nan had owned them years before I was ever even a thought in anybody's mind or any kind of a possibility. I've tried looking online for the painter/artist, but I can't find this person anywhere, or any of their work anywhere else, which makes me think they weren't exactly popular, so the chances of me owning one is even slimmer than anybody would ever think. I'm going to ask my mom more about this tonight. However, this is either the strangest coincidence I've ever had in my life, or maybe it's something more. Maybe it's a sign from the universe that I was meant to be. The other day I went to my grandmother's house with my parents to check up on her, and we were having a normal conversation when all of a sudden she says that Uncle Alex's Alzheimer's is getting worse. And they were talking about it like it was normal and everything. Uncle Alex died over 4 years ago, and I remember it clear as day because I went to his funeral and everything. But then they decided to call him up because they had some questions about his Alzheimer's, and they wanted to talk with him. And he was in the call and everything, and it was FaceTime with his wife. My aunt started to talk about how he was getting a fear of the stairs, and my Uncle Alex refused to go near them. A short time after that, he died after complications from falling down the stairs. Now I'm wondering, what in the world happened? On March 23rd of 2020, I delivered to a customer. I'm a truck driver, and I'm required to be on the docks of my customer to confirm my deliveries. About halfway through the delivery, the receiver turned to the forklift driver and says to him, "Hey, I forgot to tell you, but I cooked for my daughter last night. She was in town, so I had the pleasure to cook for her." The forklift driver replied, "Oh yeah, that's great. What did you cook for her?" "I cooked some stuffed bell peppers. My daughter loves stuffed bell peppers." Meanwhile, at the opposite end of the docks, an argument is getting heated by a couple of younger employees. It's getting bad enough that it takes everybody's attention away from the conversation and our work. Then I ask, "Where's the supervisor?" To which the receiver replies, "He's not going to do anything. I don't even know how he got this job, to be honest." And then the forklift operator says, "I'm just glad I'm nearing retirement. This time next year, I'll be at home and not fooling around with any of this." The next time I deliver to the same customer is August 10th of 2020. About halfway through the load, the receiver says, "Hey," and at this point, I get very euphoric with this deja vu feeling. "I forget to tell you, but I cooked for my daughter last night." I knew what she was going to say after that. I know what the forklift driver response was going to be. It played out exactly the same way that it played out on March 23rd, earlier that year. Exactly. Even the argument at the opposite end of the dock. It was the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. I had deja vu. It seemed like I've been there before, but I know how everything was going to turn out. It feels familiar after it's taken place, but that specific moment, it was not deja vu. It was way more powerful than that. It felt like deja vu, but far more extreme. It was like some kind of a replay that I can't explain, that is just too overpowering to even give it the description of deja vu. The facial expressions, the responses about the supervisor and retirement. I almost wanted to change my question about the supervisor, but I decided not to. I decided to let it just all play out. But I knew about the stuffed bell peppers as soon as the receiver said, "Hey," and then bam, it hit me. One of my fish got sick and was dying over 2 days ago. I removed him from the tank and put him in a separate tank so that when he did die, the other fish would not eat him and possibly catch whatever he had that killed him. I had 3 of these kinds of fish in the tank, including him. He was the smallest and was more maroon than the bright red of the other 2. After he died, I flushed him, played Amazing Grace, and then went back to work. When I came home that night, he was back in my tank, looking just fine as always. I called my sister into the room and had her look at the fish that I thought was dead, and she knew that I flushed him this morning since she was in my bathroom when I actually sent him down the toilet. My boyfriend and I had ordered a couple of pizzas because we were starving, but they were bigger than we anticipated, and we got super full off just one pizza. So we decided, why not drive around and see if there's anyone who we can give the second pizza to, since there's a couple of places we knew where quite a few homeless people would hold up signs for food. So we drive around and drive through a couple of spots, and we see no one. So we drive through a couple of other spots and can't find anybody else, and decide just to go home after stopping at the grocery store. We pull up to the grocery store kind of feeling upset that we couldn't help somebody out. And I kid you not, we're sitting in the car, about to get out, and a man comes up to our car window and knocks. So we roll down the window and he tells us that he's been trying to find food for his family, and he just lost his job, and they've gone days without food, and asks if there's any way that we could help him out. Out of the 10 plus years that I've lived down here, I've been going to this grocery store a lot, and I've never had anybody so much as approach me for anything. And I think it's pretty crazy that as we're about to get rid of this pizza, a random person just comes out of nowhere and asks for help feeding his entire family. And lo and behold, we have enough food to give him for an entire family. No such thing as a coincidence, I suppose. There's no better feeling than knowing that you can help out your fellow man in need. About 8 years ago, me, my girlfriend, and my dog went on a road trip. All of the places we visited, one in particular stayed in my mind. We were passing through California towards the border with Oregon and needed a place to camp. We met a local driving a truck with no plates. As he walked out, we noticed he was holding 4 open beers. He was calling out for some hippie's dog that just jumped out of the back of the truck. He wandered into the woods calling the dog. About a half an hour later, he emerged, 2 beers in hand. Apparently his family had deep roots in Humboldt County, and his family had been growing stuff in the forest for generations. He gave us directions to Sinkion Wilderness State Park, where there are black sand beaches. He went on about how beautiful it was, and we decided to take his suggestion. He hauled butt to the exits and waved us in. At the time, we were driving a 1987 4x4 5-speed Toyota pickup, and even though it was an old car, with patience, it could pretty much get us anywhere. It was past midday, and the sheer beauty of all the sight made me lose track of time. The Lost Coast is a gorgeous place. By the time we got to the Wheeler campsite, it was full and getting late. I looked at our map and saw a place called Shelter Cove, a bit northwest. I decided that I would take a jeep trail out a bit and find a place to pull out and camp. The only problem was that all the places to pull off were gated closed with warning signs on them. The dude who had led us to this place had mentioned that the park bordered some hunting lands where big game was brought in for sports. Who knows if that was true, but the sun was getting lower and I knew that I was running out of time to set up camp. In my haste, I misjudged the depth of the mud puddle and sank to a top, and it began to rain after that. We tried frantically to use anything we could to dig ourselves out of this mess, but it was impossible. Every scoop of mud instantly filled up with more, and it was getting dark, and the ocean breeze was really cold. We dug late into the night and got nowhere. We slept in front of my truck that night. That morning we woke up sore and very tired. We were still wet from the night before. Two options. We could walk back and get help, or we could stay and try to dig our way out of this mess. We figured splitting would be dangerous if there were big game or predators in the wilderness. We decided to stay to try to dig our way out. We had enough food and water for days. That's when I noticed something really strange. Coming up the jeep trail towards us was this compact sedan. The little Honda came to a stop, and out came this man. I was fixated with the fact that his car was completely spotless, with not a single speck of mud on it. I didn't even notice he called to us until my girlfriend pulled me out of my brief trance. He introduced himself. He said his name was John and that he was a tourist. He was a bit above average height, in his mid-50s, slightly balding, and he was of slender build and wore wireframe glasses. All he had in his car was a detailed topographic map. That's it. He said that he had just passed by Shelter Cove, and it was a bunch of mansions, and we couldn't really camp there. He asked if I had ever pulled a car stuck in snow. I hadn't. He showed me how and asked if I had a tow cable, which I did. He pulled us out with his little car. In the time it took for me to stow the cable away, he had scooted his car out of the edge of the trail and spoke to me, and he said, "If you have any doubts about something, stop. Really look at what's in front of you." After that, he somehow magically avoided the edges of the mud puddles, and he just went on his way. Luck was on our side. We got back into my truck and went on to check out the mansions. We figured we would enjoy the drive and get back to the main road to find a better campsite. About 100 feet down the path, we ran into yet another huge puddle. I took the advice I just received and checked the depth. It was about half a foot of mud. Impassable. We turned around and started thinking, how did he get that Honda out past that puddle? I turned around, making a 1,000,000-point turn, and went the way we came, going around the original puddle in which I had gotten stuck. I noticed the only tracks on the trail were my old ones. John's automobile didn't leave any tracks. I stopped and looked behind my truck. The earth was wet. My truck had laid new tracks on the trail, yet I couldn't find John's tracks anywhere. I followed the trail back looking for his tracks, but I was never able to find him. We finally made it to the Lost Coast and had a great day. We saw elk and some neat seabirds. I was a bit unsettled by the whole thing, not in a creepy way. It was more out of curiosity and wonder. There was no way that car could have made it on that jeep trail. And why didn't he have anything on him except for that map? Why didn't his car have any mud on it whatsoever? And how come wherever the heck he ended up going, he did not leave any tracks? I feel like something was looking out for us that day. But maybe it's just some kind of glitch, or some have suggested perhaps we veered off the timeline. What do you think? This happened a few days ago. My husband and I were at home. Neither of us were intoxicated or on any kinds of mind-altering substances. It was just a normal evening. For reference, I'm 5'8", and my husband is 5'7", and we've been together for years, and know very well what the other looks like head on. I had gone to the kitchen to make a sandwich, and something felt off. I wasn't sure what, until my husband asked if I was taller than usual. I was flat-footed and barefoot, but realized my viewpoint was as if I was on tiptoes. I could see the top of the fridge, and my hips were above the kitchen counter. I turned to face my husband, and he seemed much shorter than usual. Our eyes were usually pretty close to even, but they seemed much lower than mine. He said that he felt like his height didn't change at all, but I looked like I was a bit taller. Understandably, we were both freaked out and were wandering around our apartment trying to figure out what was going on. But suddenly, everything felt right again, and it's kind of hard to explain. At that moment, I returned to the kitchen, and I could no longer see the top of the fridge, and the counter was back even with my hips. My husband returned, and both of us looked right again, and we looked directly at each other. It was like once we couldn't see each other, and now we could, and everything seemed to be back to normal. I've heard of Alice in Wonderland syndrome before, but for it to have happened where somebody else can see it seems impossible. I wonder if anybody else has had an experience like mine, or if anybody knows of anybody else who's had something similar happen to them. I think my life has been badly rebooted. About 2 weeks ago, I woke up and my life was different. It was sort of the same, but there were lots of little details that were off or in the wrong order. I remember my life as it was for me, and I have pictures and messages of all sorts showing what my life was, and it isn't like what it is now. I grew up in Austria, moved to the UK, and my mom got a divorce when I was a kid and remarried. However, in this life, I live in Austria, and my stepdad is my real dad, and instead of me having a long-term girlfriend in Austria, then getting married in the United Kingdom to a different girl, all three of us lived together in Austria as a trouple. It seems like somebody rebooted my life or created my life with just a rough idea of the important moments and people and just jumbled everything together. I was freaking out at the beginning, but I'm slowly accepting everything the way it is now. And maybe I'm completely crazy, or maybe it's some weird glitch that's happened to me. Because my hair is to my waist, I use significantly more conditioner than I do shampoo. Like a lot of people, I went through times when money was tight, and it was during one of these times that I started using an inexpensive coconut shampoo and conditioner, initially because of the buy two special. It smelled good and did a decent job for about $1 a bottle. When I ran low on conditioner, I went to buy a new bottle. Nothing to it. I picked it off the shelf, checked out, and went home. But when I took it to the bathroom and pulled it out of the bag, I realized I had purchased a bottle of shampoo. They really look alike, so I figured that I made a mistake, or it had been shelved in the wrong slot. So I put it under the sink and put the conditioner back on the shopping list. That should have been the end of the story, however, it wasn't. This happened to me 4 more times. I would check the bottle, spelling out the word Conditioner on the label, checking the bottle's barcode against the shelf tag, once even asking the confused cashier to tell me whether I had shampoo or conditioner. I still have several bottles of coconut shampoo under the sink, as for one reason or another, the universe just won't let me shake this glitch off.